Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the news behind the news with Ralph Cantav on Mix 94.7 FM. This afternoon is going to be an extended program because I have here with me Mr. Theo Heyliger. I think the name says it all. Even as we're about to do this interview, I titled it with a possible name for autobiography. Theo Heyliger, Tourism, Projects, and Politics. So, good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program.
And good afternoon, Mr. Kantav, and thank you for having me on the program.
Okay, great. So, to begin, how have you been doing? I know that you had your health challenges, and how are you doing right now?
Well, life has slowed down tremendously for me, not being involved in the political war, let me put it that way. But health-wise, that has been a big challenge as well. I had to, do some operations because I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And good thing we caught it in a very early stage. And then I had my kidney operation in Boston, first having to remove some kidney stones here in St. Martin, and where the medical staff in St. Martin took great care of me. And then I had to go on in Boston. So now I have to do checkups every 6 months or so. But God willing, I'm still around.
Okay, great. Well, even as you mentioned the hospital, of course, years ago, I remember, the building of a new hospital was something that you envisioned. So even with your experience, how is your take on the healthcare system on the island and the upcoming, new hospital building that's expected?
Mr. Kandav, it's so funny. I can remember when we came out with the plan for the hospital, and actually we even drew it up. And we came out with a massive campaign. I can always remember several of the other parties saying, yeah, you don't need a new hospital. You actually need new nurses and doctors. And we had also a plan for that. And the funniest thing, as soon as they got in, they continued on with the plan. It would have been finished already. That's the more difficult part, and probably would have been finished and probably at half the cost that you are paying today. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's water under the bridge. But I'll tell you something. I still believe certain things are missing in our new hospital, and I'm still a firm believer of the medical tourism part of it. A lot of those in the Ministry of Health and things like that, they don't really see the benefit. But if we have a hospital that's going to cost us $100 million, and you only are looking forward that only the local people are going to have to pay for it, I think that's where you're barking up the wrong tree. One, the medical tourism of it, if you look at Cayman Islands and other islands, Dominican Republic, we send a lot of our patients. Well, we used to send them to Dominican Republic. It changes so often, I don't know where they're going anymore. But I think it would have continued to help. The idea would have been that we would have used our medical facilities, let the doctors come in with their patients, let them stay on the island, their families stay on the island. They do the medical operation through our medical theaters, using our nurses, using the facilities. So the hospital will be actually making money with the medical tourism. Hotels would be making money, taxis, car rentals, restaurants, you name it. That was the idea behind it. But I will say that I'm impressed with our local staff. I think they handled the epidemic with COVID tremendously well, and I think there's a major future for that. I think they need more nurses, of course, more doctors. So that is a good field that we can grow in. We just have to have the vision to and I would still continue pushing the fact that we do medical tourism on the island. Very interesting. Some day ago, I met some of the doctors from the French hospital, and they were telling me they're actually flying out in the medvac on a daily basis, people to Guadeloupe and Martinique, and the cost of doing that is around, I was thinking like 30 to 40,000 per flight. That's amazing. Whoa. That's an amazing number. And COVID, I think, has shown us that we have a lot of issues to still deal with in our medical system, because again, I don't think anywhere in the world has really been built for what COVID brought onto the community and in particular health. But again, I still tip my hat off to the incredible work that the medical center did. And now I understand, that they just got in there, a few months ago, an MRI, and they're doing some spectacular work with the little that they have. So it's an area that I think can grow, and it's an area that I think can grow for the entire community of the country, not only just the medical center.
Okay, gotcha. What comes to mind then? What you just said, particularly about the health tourism, is one. Also because, your overall goal is still to, of course, see your nation, your country be healthy, which would mean you would have less people, seeing a doctor or being hospitalized and stuff. So I do get where you're coming from, where that is concerned. Also, with having more doctors, I must say something that just came to mind is recently, as in a few months ago, I found out that we actually have quite a bit of young St. Martiners currently studying at AUC. From my last count, it was about maybe 8 to 9, and there may be more of, St. Martin children, some who I went to school with, studying at AUC, which is a great thing, of course, for the island. But one thing that comes to mind, you speak about the vision for health tourism, let's say, but what does it take to make a deal happen? Because I think that's something that the public doesn't really understand. Well, I'm not saying understand, but aware of. So let's say you come up with an idea, you have a plan to do something, but how do you make the deals happen?
Well, first of all, Mr. Kantev, seeing all the troubles that I have went through, I have to please correct the word deal. So
agreements.
The agreement.
Yeah.
Look, if you, let me put it this way: when we wanted to push the hospital itself. You have to look for a network to be able to get it. And I even forgot the name of the company, but they're one of the largest in the world, the Swiss company. And as a matter of fact, they were making a new contract with the Aruba government. And that's how I got to be introduced with them. And then what we did, I didn't continue on with that. I left it to the Minister of Health and the SZV director at that time, and also even the medical director at that time. And it would is it what? I'm still here trying to think of the name.
It might come later on.
Yeah, it'll come later on. Getting a little older now. But what they had brought to the table was very similar to INSO. But exactly what I had predicted, that the sense that INSO had issues with, I think, the St. Lucia government and everything, and it was going through the issues. I said, if we go on with INSO, we have to be very careful because of their bankruptcy and being taken over by another Italian firm, which is Fincantieri. They build cruise ships and stuff like that as well. And yeah, that's what happened. So we're 3 years later. Like I said, we could have been probably cutting the ribbon or from right before COVID, which would have been spectacular timing. But again, like I said, it was a real chance that we lost. But again, I'm not mad about that because again, at least we're getting a new hospital. Let me put it that way.
Indeed. So speaking of vision and so forth, there are some missed opportunities, I would say, as far as certain projects that were envisioned that didn't take place. One of them that comes to mind is the Ring Road. Mm-hmm. Could you give some background info on how that idea came about? What is your thoughts on the fact that still presently the sign is just there and it is actually now further eyesore for this plan?
Yeah, it is. Very good question. And again, I'll give you some history, and that that's something that is mainly lacked upon because a lot of people don't know the history of a lot of things that went on in this country. In the early 2000s, at that time we put in for a total master plan of the Philipsburg area, and it was done by a group out of the Netherlands called the Almere Group.
Okay.
And the Almere Group were quite famous in the Netherlands due to the fact that, as you call them, the Almere Group, they redesigned the city of Almere. And that's why the reason they were brought into St. Martin. So based on that, when they put out the master plan, then what we did, we conditioned other architects, some from the U.S., some local companies as well. That's how the boardwalk came about being, the beautification of Front Street. You just didn't pick up and do things like that. By removing the bollards, a lot of people didn't realize now you got cars parking everywhere. The issue of people saying that it was not wheelchair accessible, that's not true, because the problem is how Front Street and even Back Street, the size of the road in between also dictated if you're either going to choose that cars can drive on or that you have bigger sidewalks. I wanted bigger sidewalks, but at the same time, everyone kicked up about it, that they wanted to drive through traffic because they were scared, and rightfully so. So you were trying to do a balance,
Gotcha.
that when a cruise ship is not in, they still wanted traffic to drive through. So if you made the roads any narrower, you couldn't go through. Then I'll give you another one. Then you had to worry about Carnival. So when Carnival troops come through, the bands come through. So all of those things had to be taken into account.
Gotcha.
And that's why we had to place the bollards. The bollards were designed as well that you could put a rope through it so that you could have crowd control. All of these things were designed in the plans using our police force. So a lot of people were involved in that. And then to see how Phillipsburg has changed, it breaks my heart. Removing the bricks, I can remember the point of what had happened, and it's basically maintenance. It's nothing about bad work. It's called maintenance. If you have bricks in your house or whatever, you have to make sure you maintain them. The roads in Rome, the roads in the Netherlands were built thousands of years ago on the same bricks, and yet they remain. And now we're digging up. It's in Dutch they call it kapitaalvernietiging, and it takes away from the beauty. But now to get to your original point, which is the ring road. Mm-hmm. So the ring road was designed again and the master plan by the Almere Group. And what the Almere Group did, and also we had other studies come about for Phillipsburg as well, that we needed something like, I think it was close to 3,000 parking lots for Phillipsburg to be able to accommodate not only the tourists, but also the local companies that are involved in there. The idea behind the ring road was that the road that you have now, the Pondville Road, would have been actually changed to where the parking that we have now, so that all of the, let's call it, we would have made a new boulevard, a new, let's call it, boardwalk on the side of the Central Bank and GB and all of that. So you had been able to walk there. Think about it this way: you can have restaurants with umbrellas outside. You could sit outside. So that was the idea. And then you move the road where the parking is now and the parking where the road is. And then the area where we filled in would have been a greenery and then a major road going completely around the pond, so that you wouldn't be pulling out and pulling in, because that's what creates the big traffic jams on the Pondville Road. So by doing that, there was supposed to be no construction there until you get down by the area of where Old Van Dorp used to be. Sorry, but in that area there,
close to
I think there's a
bread supermarket.
2 supermarkets there.
Yeah.
So going on your way to what is now Real, what used to be Vlon, that area you could build on. But everything else before that would have been parks and parking. So we would have created, I think, something out of the 3,000, we'd have created nearly 2,000 parking lots. So you would have had parking, and then on the ring road would have been, like a park, a jogging path, a bicycle path that you can do, exercises going around there. Then also at that time, we had certain areas designed to talk about the history of the country. So, and that was being done by our cultural department. So you had an area depicting the whole salt industry of the country. Then we had areas of the country depicting how the border was made. So it would have been able that the idea was, while you're walking, you could also get education of the country, and they would have cleaned up the entire filling of the salt pond. So this would have been the last filling of the salt pond, so no more land was to be given out. And that was the main idea of the ring road. So it would have completely, well, not completely because you could never stop all the traffic jams. And how it was going to be financed, we were going to create the parking authority of St. Martin, so that when tourists come to the area, they're paying for the parking and as well as that, and then also using what we wanted to do was create a like in the U.S. you have a Department of Transportation. Wanted to create a Department of Transportation locally, so that the monies that were going towards, for example, what you pay now in your number plate tax, that would go to there, so that you would fund now the repairs of our roads, new roads, and also create a parking authority, so where you're collecting now fees for parking, and that would have been the funding that you use to be able to build it. So,
slight interjection, sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
Something different from the Department of, because we do have a transport department, right? Well, I guess you're referring to the manner in which it's function.
Yeah, it doesn't function like the U.S. has a Department of Transportation. It functions more in the sense of like bus licenses, taxi permits. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about because in government, you have so many overlapping issues that you tend to not be able. Like, here's the issue: when government wants to build a road, they have to give it out to somebody. Somebody has to design it, engineer it. What I was trying to do at that time was create policies. For example, when you're building a road, you need to have X amount of aggregate to be able to do the foundation. So you would have a design criteria that you have to stay to. For example, what I learned, and I'm one of these hands-on people. So when you paint the road, I realized when I was minister that it wouldn't last more than 3 months, maximum 6 months. I said, but this is crazy. Why is this paint? And then, so the contractors would tell me, yeah, but Theo, it's the environment, it's the salt and all that. So one time I was in the U.S. and I was in a traffic jam, and I got out the car and I saw that the highways in the U.S., the line on the road is actually nearly as thick as my finger. And so that's when you drive over from one side to side, you go like
Yeah.
And then I started going on the Department of Transportation, and you see that just to paint a line, in the road, they have a whole criteria, nearly 10 pages long, of how this is done. So I introduced that to Vromi at that time, and I wanted all our roads to be done that way. That's why all of a sudden the lines went from a 3 month, 6 month to now nearly a 5 year lasting. And what it was is simple. They bought a small little machine, it wasn't a big one, and they used to heat the paint with glass beads in it, so at night it actually reflects. Gotcha. But they don't do that anymore, so they stopped. Now they're going back to the regular, just putting on this paint, which is, okay, it's good for labor, but you spend so much money every 6 months having to repaint rather than doing it the right way. Yeah. So those are the little things.
I got you.
You understand that what we were trying to do with the Department of Transport, one, that would have been the lines, how a road is built. Also looking, for example, if our main roads are asphalt, we wanted to change the criteria because it worked out well in Middle Region when we designed the roads there to go to concrete. And we put nearly 6 or 8 inches of concrete. And it lasts much longer because of the amount of water that you have under, and especially the neighborhoods. So we were going to change the criteria for that. And that's where, changes in government, changes in, I guess, everything.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'll have you continue because I did kind of throw you off a bit. You were speaking on the parking authority and so forth, and development of the ring road. But looking at Phillipsburg in general, recently, government has announced the idea to revitalize Phillipsburg. You were, of course, instrumental in the boardwalk. But looking at it now, though, do you think it has failed considering... one, I guess it could be an issue of maintenance and upkeep, but the idea to sort of bring more life to Phillipsburg because it tends to be dead.
What did you say is failed? The boardwalk or Phillipsburg itself?
The boardwalk.
How could the boardwalk fail? Because before the boardwalk, there were no restaurants on that area. As a matter of fact, there were only septic tanks on that area. Because I can show you pictures. The entire area from Captain Hodge to Bobby didn't have one, more or less. You remember you had the St. Rose Hospital, okay, maybe before your time, but St. Rose Hospital, they had their septic buried in the back. There were maybe not even a handful of restaurants. So the beach, in many other countries, the beach is the most popular thing. In St. Martin, Phillipsburg, nobody cared about the beach. Where you're seeing now, if you go on the beach, the problem is it's never been replenished since we did the first pushing of sand, which they should, because I see now by the Chesterfield area they're dredging, that sand should actually be brought up to the beach. That should have been an agreement. Because when the harbor did any dredging, what we told the harbor, you can't throw it out to sea. You have to throw the sand on our beach, because that replenishes your beach every time. Getting back to the issue of Phillipsburg. Phillipsburg, there's a master plan, but you have to continue to invest in that master plan and continue to bring the ideas. I was able to do many of them in terms of the boardwalk, the rebeautification of Front Street, Back Street, even Canagita Street. Now, in continuing to follow the studies and the vision that we had, the idea was also to be able now to build like a little bit like Miami in the sense of building condominiums along on the beach. Because what that would do, you're bringing in people with money to be able now staying in town, living in town, but you got to be able to change the policy and help that policy out. What has happened in Phillipsburg, if you have the policy of Romy and it says, listen, you need X amount of parking per location, which I do agree with, because, again, people just build and then there's no parking, so the poor people don't have anything. But here was the idea. You take the property from the library. You take the post office. You take an area by GB, and you need to find one more. Okay, so where the old office of GB was. And you designate that I want 4 parking garages in town. The Ring Road, you also continue with the parking for there. And you send out to the developers of Front Street, or even Back Street, all right, look, I'll ease the restrictions on the parking, but now you have to contribute towards the parking authority. So if you're going to build, let's just say, 20 condominiums, okay, in Phillipsburg, and you only have 2 parking spots, so that means that's equivalent to only 1 condominium. So you have to compensate government for another 36 spots. So you have to show an agreement with your parking authority that you can rent from them. Then it also creates a little shuttle service through Phillipsburg that drops you to the parking authority. So you're a tourist, you come, you drop your car into a very secure garage, and then they drop you, similar to Miami Beach, and then you go to your hotel or your condominium. What that would have done, you would have now enticed people to develop their properties. Locals now can participate into the building of some high rises in Phillipsburg. You would bring back not only your daytime guests, which is the cruise ships, but you would also now bring back nighttime guests with money into Phillipsburg. By doing that now, the restaurants stay open at night. You get bars, nightclubs open up at night. You get Airbnb in Phillipsburg. So you create that. Now, how do you fund that? Everybody likes to say, all right, Theo, you can talk the talk, but walk the walk. When the Netherlands Antilles was around, one of the things that I always said, and to me, the greatest holdback to St. Martin has been finance. And that's why we're in trouble today, that we have to continue to beg the Dutch always for finance. Now, we have a very good pension fund that we have now, APS. Basically the policy of the central bank to our pension fund and even SZV and other funds in the country has been that you have to, I think it's 60-40. I'm not sure if it's 60 abroad or 60 local.
60
but
local.
you have to come up with that funding for local. Now, APS will say, yeah, but you're not giving me any projects to fund. All right, let them fund the parking authority. You guarantee the funds from the parking authority to APS. It's the money from the St. Martin people. So the money is not going abroad, and if the stock market falls in the U.S., what we're going to cry here. But if anything happens to our economy, it's still in St. Martin. That's what my grandfather always taught me. Let them build the airport, let them build the harbor. Well, not APS, but somebody else. What are they going to do to you? They can't take it with them. You understand? So if you did that, then the idea was to create like a brokerage firm on St. Martin through maybe a branch off of APS or even SZV, and say to the local people, instead of you put in your money in the banks of St. Martin that don't borrow to you all anyway. The only thing that they want to borrow to you is to buy a car. Okay, they don't give you money for your housing unless you can basically buy the house yourself, and then they're just giving you the money for the furniture. No, we create a bond now specifically for Phillipsburg that says, listen, I'll give you a 6% or 5% to 6% return on your money, and it's totally tax free. You know what that would do? Now all of a sudden, nobody is sending their money abroad. They're now investing into projects that are going to make their own country move forward. The little older person with their pension now can say, listen, I got like 5,000 guilders in the bank. Let me put it in there, and I'm getting my return every month. So now I can live off of that. It creates wealth in your community. But if you don't create those necessary avenues, then where do we go? So these are the things that I miss in the vision and coming up with creativity of how to fund certain things, that you can involve your locals. If you look at the Prime Minister from Barbados, in her speech she said, the banks act as if they are the security guard of our money. Okay? Now, the problem is, and she said that she would legislate, and our issue is, and I've had it many times with the central bank, we have a central bank that since Mr. Trump has left, gives us no recommendations on how to move our economy, how to legislate against our banks. It takes you, Mr. Kantav, if you go to the bank now, try open up an account. Try open up. Minimum, if you're lucky, 3 to 6 months. Minimum. By the time you give your underwear size, your this, your that, business plan, you can't open an account. My son just went away to college. I mean, they want to know his source of funding. Here's everything. As a child, I can remember, you go, people would come to your birthday and they would bring you a bank book and say, now this is the way we start out, $50. You imagine trying to open up that now to, you go to a shower and say there's a bank book. That's not possible because that poor little child that just born now have to have a business plan of where the source of funding is coming. So we have made it so difficult in there.
And listen to I'm thinking of, because you mentioned, for example, getting recommendations from the central bank and stuff. But I'm thinking about what of our local expertise?
No, but you see, now here is where, and this is why I give a lot of kudos to the former president of the central bank. In many of the discussions I had with him, and these same ideas, and we were pushing ahead with them until, well, they got rid of him and they got rid of me. But what he did with the central bank, he hired a lot of expertise because the central bank could afford it. Our local government, they go and they hire a consultant, he charges a whole load of money. No, what the central bank was doing, hiring the right legislative lawyers, the right economists. So instead of going and asking, for example, the World Bank, make this study for us. No, we go to our own central bank, and you fund the study for us. For example, central bank did the study on the U.S. preclearance for St. Martin. We didn't have to go outside of the country to get that. You could do it. So what you tell the central bank, say, listen, I want to revitalize Phillipsburg. I want you to help me set up this brokerage issue so that it gets the proper licenses. I want to move away, that my people can move their monies outside of the banks. None of our banks are local. Let me make sure not one of them have one local person owns one share.
And I want to touch on that with you later on.
You can touch anything you want.
Okay.
But just let me explain. So what would happen now, the central bank comes with legislation, proposes these positions to government or parliament, and parliament passes them. But it cannot be that the central bank sits back and doesn't give recommendations to parliament on how. You can't tell me that the economy is hurting and you're not telling me anything of how to fix them. Parliament has stated on many occasions, central bank, people can't open up an account in St. Martin easier. Okay? I could give you, I got the same problem now, Mr. Kantav, and anybody that has any issue with the justice system, that's it. Your life is over. You ain't getting no more loan. You can't open a bank account or anything. And then they blame it on the fact of the corresponding banking. So what you've also created, I'm sorry to say, but if anybody ever made a mistake in their life, you've basically thrown them out. So you're really creating an even bigger murderer in the country because now they can't do any business in their own country. So I'm giving you the issues of, in my opinion, a central bank that is not helping the country. And here, that we had in the past, that you could have helped the country. So it's not that the will must be there too. And if you have the will, then you will have the vision as well.
Okay. So I still wanted to touch on Phillipsburg a bit, but in terms of the cruise and stuff. But I'll get back to that. And so my question for you is, what is your thoughts then on a national development bank? This is something that we've always heard of, but how would we put that to work?
Well, again, you can do the same thing again through the central bank. Because, and why you laugh, but why I say it, because they have the expertise. Mm-hmm. And we own the bank. We own the central bank. And this is something that, you don't get myself in trouble again, but this hands-off approach of companies that we own as a government, I think it can't work because you can't tell them anything. So the central bank, you can't tell them either. I mean, but it's ridiculous because a national bank.
But
guess what?
I think
you need a license.
Helps protect, because we.
We'll get to that too. But you need a license from the central bank. Mm-hmm. So if you don't include them, how are you going to open a national bank? You understand what I'm saying?
Okay,
so you need the central bank to start to come in your aid from now. Because again, you're gonna need a license, okay? You're gonna need a license to be able to become like a commercial bank. And the only way I say it, you could do two things. Here would have been my position. One, create the bond issues for the different projects in the country. And I've said it again. I don't see why GB, Airport, Telem, Harbor, none of these companies anymore need to go abroad. Why should financial institutions abroad out of St. Martin make money when our own APS have money, SZV have money, and our own local people?
SZV's a lot of debt, though.
Well, but they still got some money. Don't let them tell you that they ain't got no money. They spend a lot of it in the hospital. But they've invested abroad too. So why they can't invest in St. Martin? And again, I say too, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, why they can't take some of their savings out of the bank. Did you hear what the Windward Island banks, the billions that they have in reserves? But where you think that reserves go? Curacao, in their ownership of the MCB, but it's not spent in St. Martin. So when you hear about the projects, I don't hear them doing any housing foundation. I don't hear them financing no GB. I don't hear them financing airport and these things, okay? So
I think that is where why there is that laissez-faire or hands-off approach with our government-owned companies, because clearly what we've seen in the last few years, especially right now with GB, is because of political meddling and so forth, you see where the companies deteriorate in their corporate governance.
Perfect example now of a hands-off approach of government and letting a board run the company. Four court cases.
But the board is recommended is people that government.
What has the board, Mr. Kantav, done since Irma to now to better the situation in GB?
I think the question.
And they were there.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
They were there.
I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but the board is recommended by the government. So the question is, why are we not appointing people who can, let's say, move a quad?
The problem is you can appoint people, and I'll tell you something. If you follow the criterias, which are laid down also in articles of incorporation of many of the companies, you get to sit down. We put you in. Mr. Kantav is an educated gentleman. He knows that. He goes into GB, right? But with no discussion with government on what should be the future, that what government sees and what GB sees too. For example, okay? Government says, Mr. Kantav, or GB, we want to see renewable energy be a major part. Now you go in there and your idea, no, I ain't into no solar and wind and all that craziness. The government don't know what they're talking about. But you see, now here we go. So I'll give you something. I'm the one that also issued the concession for GB. And in the concession has that every year it was supposed to be, I think, 2% of the energy produced in St. Martin had to be renewable. But GB never followed the concession. And then there's nobody looking out at the concession either. So the point to as well is that you need some kind of dialogue that the shareholder of the company has some kind of say that it wants to see for basically the continuity of this country. You can't have that GB itself says, I'm not invested in generators and we got blackouts galore. You understand? If you can't tell me that you have a replacement engine program and going to better technological generators, for example, that produce gas or produce solar or produce, you can't just tell me that you just going with what you want. No. It have to be in consultation with your shareholder. I mean, this radio station, you can't just go and pick up and buy new monitors without discussing with the boss. You understand what I'm saying? So, to me, that is where it also goes bad, because government is also required to write a letter of guarantee. The airport has a letter of guarantee from government. If it fail, government have to pay the bill. But government have no say in whether we want U.S. pre-clearance, whether we want a new fuel farm or anything. No. And I think that's wrong. In the sense that there must be a balance.
Yeah.
Or sell the company then.
So, okay, what is the take
Sell
then
the
on
company.
privatizing, for example, we took on GB. Because, for example, one of the things I realized with GB is, as I mentioned, government appoints the supervisory board of directors. Right. And to be honest, sometimes when you look at the candidates, they're not persons who could really help the company. So that's one. But also, even as far as, let's say, the managing board, the fact that you only get 3 years to really to run I think that is too little. Now, this is a personal opinion, but you should have at least be maybe 5 to 7 years to really, one, you have to get acclimated with the company. If you look at the last managing board, which was Chittick, Janssen, and Ms. Arundel.
And that, yes.
You come in, Irma hits, recovery,
right.
Pandemic. What can you really do?
But who canceled their contract is the supervisory board.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
But that's what I say. That's which goes back to who appoints the supervisory board.
No, so here, Mr. Kadab, is where it baffles me, and I always say it. Before, and this goes from minister straight down. Sorry, okay, because as a member of parliament, I can remember before the minister sits down in that chair, man, he believes. And you're running the party, they believe in the ideas. As soon as they sit in the chair, they forget about party, they forget about the parliament, they forget everything. And this is also happens with the board of directors of many of the companies. Before they're there, oh yes, we agree with this. Airport is a perfect example. They agreed with U.S. pre-clearance, and all of a sudden, boom, they change their mind, and then here we go. So then you become, so how do you regulate the battle between government and her own companies? And again, I said, and her own companies. Mm-hmm. So that companies that do things completely different to what is needed in society. And I tell you this one. Remember, the reason government owns these companies is not only to provide for the managing board and the supervisory board, it's to provide for the country.
Primarily.
So again, if the country is going to gain by U.S. pre-clearance, for example, and the airport mightn't make the millions that she's supposed to make, but it's good for the country because taxes, people getting jobs and things like that. And I go back to GB. If GB is not invested in engines, and I can remember them going to Pacific Mutual Life. Now, remember something? I was, that's the financing arm. Okay. Now, I was one of the ones, because when I sat on the supervisory board at GB, at that time, the central bank had to give out a central government guarantee for GB to get loans. We got away from that, and we did the first loan abroad without a central government guarantee, which was Pacific Mutual Life. But at the same time now comes in the picture APS and these other institutions that, again, Let's make sure that they make money in our country so that our pension
And
fund.
there's a question is to what extent, because to what extent can APS, okay, yes, they are able to invest 60% locally, but how many projects can they fund? Because they don't just agree to
I think they have
fund
close to
any,
$500 million.
they don't just fund any project just like that either.
But Mr. Kantam, let me tell you something. GB is a monopoly, right?
Yeah,
Okay, good. Whether you like it or not, you got to buy power from them, right?
no other choice.
Okay, good. So, look, I look at it very simple too. Please, sometimes, again, I get myself in trouble. Yes, due diligence and all that is important. But there's only two clauses I need if I'm a financer for GB. One, in the event that you can't pay me, I'm allowed to raise electricity rates. That's one. And in the event that government wants a dividend, I get to determine yes or no. So the company has to be solvent and everything else. All the rest, you can make sure, yes, of course, management and all that. But that's the only two real things that you need because GB is a monopoly. Your money is guaranteed. You imagine after Irma, GB was basically nearly bankrupt. And now guess what? 3 years later, it have the same reserves that it had before Irma. So it is a good company that it needs to invest. It needs to do heavy investments because it hasn't lived up to the investments that should have been done for the last few years. GB, you got to remember too, put down most of its cable underground. The great United States of America, look at Puerto Rico, look at the USVI, look at Florida. They don't have their cable underground. We do. So, but we have never taken advantage of these things. And that's our problem.
So on that note, I guess finding out like with GB in our discussion on the government-owned companies, do you think then a company like that should be privatized?
Well, if there can't be that government has no say in what it invests in, I'm not talking about really running the company, right? But in the investments, okay? Then you have to ask yourself. I'm not a real big proponent because I'm not really a big proponent of privatization for government or companies, and I'll tell you why. Most of our population, or the majority of our population, works for the government companies and government. Okay. Now, people would say, "Yeah, but they would run better." I agree. I might agree with that, but I'm worried about our people. And where they're going to work.
Cuts.
Well, salary cuts.
Jobs themselves.
Jobs themselves. And, we take it for granted, but if these people, if you take out 50% of the government workforce, 50% of GB, 50% of the airport, where are we going to put all these people? So it sounds good, but there's also, for every action, there is a reaction.
Yeah, I guess you also have to consider, the purpose. For example, a company like GB, Telem, etc., government-owned companies, your main goal is not profit necessarily.
Well, you see, now
it's
there
necessary,
we go. That's
I get,
correct.
because you have to make reinvestments,
I would tell
and that
you,
is fair. But your drive is not profit.
Now you're beginning to understand my ideology in the sense of the government companies. My position would be not that the government companies, they must have a certain reserve. And I think that should be built in because of these
that
hurricanes.
Should be protected.
Yes, okay. So in my opinion, say for example, GB, based on a debt service ratio of whatever it is, that have to sit in a bank. And then guess what? That could go in a national bank. Because now, if every company had to put, just let's say, 20 million, each of them have to put as a reserve. That's nearly 80 million that you start up your National Investment Bank. You understand? Because now, all of a sudden, Mr. Kandav, you're not putting the money in the local banks. You're putting it in your National Investment Bank. That one now can even borrow to those companies because now it has an insurance on that. So we go on in how you can do it. And now we get to that point where you just said it isn't necessarily about profit. And I agree with that. It is about creating and stimulating the economy for the country to which your shareholder will then basically make the profit. Because the country of St. Martin collects its fees on taxes and levies and things like that. GB's point, and I've seen the studies throughout the Caribbean, we're still in the top 10 of the most expensive electricities in the Caribbean, I think, somewhere there. If you now are able to lower costs, and then you get products produced locally, Yeah, you name it. I mean, yeah, make glass bottles in St. Martin, things, smaller industries like that. But the problem
Light
is,
manufacturing.
right. But the problem is, I've been, since I have nothing to do anymore, really, I help a lot of people, with their business plan. And in the business plan, one of the biggest costs is utilities. You see? So they look at the French side and say, wow, electricity is only 1/3 over there. But the water, of course, is triple two. So you got the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
But if you look at that, so the cost of business of your utilities, if they are, for example, I can remember an article with the new minister. He went to see the gentleman that's doing agriculture.
Denisio.
Yes.
Yeah, but almost every minister.
But wait, I'm not. Let me just get to the point.
Gotcha.
What is his biggest cost? Water. But, and then I'm not going to bang nobody, but the Prime Minister says, let's get into agriculture. Okay, how do you do it? Water is your biggest cost. Did anybody come up with a tariff that any locally produced product gets a reduction on water? No. So if you're telling the poor population, go and grow in your backyard or open up, let's say, an aquaponics farm here, you understand? That somebody is able to do that.
So beyond a vague or broad statements, but actual, so going back to like when I asked you about the hospital, what exactly is the plan? How do
I tell you.
How do you make it possible?
And this is where, if somebody, what incentive? Okay, let's do that. After we're in COVID. But during COVID time, government was telling us, go and grow and we should have farming and all that. What incentive did government say to do it? Ain't no low income loan. Ain't no water reduction. Ain't no electricity reduction.
Subsidy
ain't
on
no
soil.
giving you no land to do it. Ain't subsidizing you, but you're telling you to go do it. And then you tell the business community, say a guy wants to open up the business and it takes 1 year to get a business permit. Business license. So you got to be, if you say you're going to do something or give it, you got to come with a solution to help them too.
So on that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.